Welcome to Hub City Spokes, where creators, catalysts, entrepreneurs, and leaders share their insight here in Lubbock, Texas. I'm Katherine White with the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, and today I have Siva Vanapalli, Professor of Chemical Engineering at Texas Tech University and co-founder and CEO for Nemalife, a biotech and scientific community dedicated to identifying molecules that promote healthy human life. Thanks for joining us.
All right. It's my pleasure, Catherine.
So tell me a little bit how you got started in chemical engineering and what brought you to Texas Tech.
Yeah, so I did my PhD in the same field, and I joined Texas Tech in 2008 as an assistant professor, and I've been there. I've been now at Tech almost about 10 years now. So the field which I'm in, it's called microfluidics, which is trying to engineer these very small devices that allows us to study various processes in terms of biology and also think about applications which can be obtained from those understanding.
So these applications that you're applying for these molecules, is it to solve a certain need or a certain problem within a molecule, or what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, so I mean at the university in the lab, and my group looks at various kinds of applications. We have problems which we look in terms of basic chemical engineering, thinking about how oil flows in small channels, which is important for oil recovery. But we also have interest in trying to apply these kinds of tools to study problems which are of interest in human health. And the specific thing that is a focus of Nemalife is trying to use these small organisms which are nematodes or worms, and use them as an animal model to do a lot of screening of drugs so that we can identify molecules which can promote healthy human life.
So what specifically about these molecules are you identifying?
Sure. So the goal of Nemalife is to figure out are there molecules which can be useful in terms of addressing age-related diseases. So age is a significant risk factor for many, many diseases, as you might know. So for example, cancer, heart diseases, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they all mostly show up when you're older. So as a result, the question is there a way to think about interventions which can either delay the onset of aging and or think about healthy aging, because then if you have healthy aging, then it effectively is a way to prevent the onset of all these age-related diseases. So in that regard, if you want to study that, it's very difficult to do aging studies in human because we live really long, right? But these worms live only for about 3 weeks. So in that sense, it's an accelerated aging model to test a lot of drugs and compounds, which then hopefully you can translate into other organisms and hopefully ultimately into humans.
So when you're talking about introducing an intervention, what specifically are you doing in Nemalife to study those molecules?
Right. So we basically have developed a technology. It's a high throughput screening technology that allows us to automate the processes that involved in testing lots of drugs, right? So just to give an example, there is a lot of plant-based compounds which remain to be undiscovered that can actually promote in a healthy life, right? So a good example is like green tea. So there's lots of evidence that green tea has lots of antioxidants and other things. So in that sense, the question becomes, can we look at other compounds and see, at least in the model of the worm, whether it can improve its health and also make it live longer.
So did you develop this idea as a professor, and how did it become Nemalife?
Yeah, sure. So I and my grad student at the time, we were thinking about the technologies that can allow us to do rapid testing of these drugs. And the existing practice in doing this testing right now is extremely tedious. Just to give an example, to test about 10 or so drugs, it might take several months to do these kinds of assays and testing. And the goal is, if you want to screen libraries of hundreds and of these compounds, then it takes many, many, many years, right? So, so we were actively thinking at that time, can we develop an automated technology that will allow us to rapidly screen these drugs? And that automation aspect, it came about because at the same time we were actually funded through NASA. So like NASA is always looking for technologies which are automatable, but at the same time give us some insights into crew health or astronaut health. So this was back in 2015 when we started thinking about automation of tools for basically handling of these worms and doing lots of testing with them. So this was the whole genesis of that.
And how did that come to fruition as a company?
Sure. So we started this research in 2015, and we have filed a patent on the technology. And just last year, we were thinking about how to commercialize this, because we have talked to some opinion leaders in both academia and industry, and it occurred to us there might be a business opportunity here. But as you know, usually as faculty, we don't get a lot of entrepreneurship training, and also students as well. So then knowing about the Innovation Hub and the activities which are going on at the Innovation Hub, it opened us a channel where we could think about how to start commercializing our technology. So we applied for the Accelerator program last year, and we enrolled it in June of last year, and we just graduated in June of this year.
Okay. So what was that process like, being a part of the Accelerator program?
Oh, it was awesome. It was hectic because there was lots of tasks and things we had to do to make the transition from being a technology inside the lab to something which can go out into the real world, right? So, and our mentors helped us and challenged us to go through a very structured process of learning. And I think the thing that I like about the Accelerator program is that it gives you a structure, right? And I think often when you're in these initial stages, things can be very hazy. But then when you have structure, it makes things streamlined. So in that sense, in terms of our team and the business, it really helped us to bring the product into the market. So like June of this year, we have officially launched our business, and now we have some ongoing sales as well.
So speaking about your business, you've mentioned a little bit about aging and the life of a molecule. Maybe you're looking at things on the cellular level. What kind of impact will your technology have potentially?
I think the rewards actually can be very large. And the reason is in the US alone right now, about 20% of the population is older than 65. And across the world, there's 500 million people who are older than 65. And, aging is a process which is not very pleasant. It's not only just because of disease onset, but just in terms of everyday functionality of doing things, it's not very pleasant. So as a result, the economic impact of thinking about an aging population is very huge, right? So that means in terms of healthcare, the actual costs are going to be tremendously high. So as a result, if there's a way to think about intervention that can promote healthy aging, the impact could be huge. But our company is more in the early stages of discovery right now, in the sense that we're testing on these compounds in animal models with the hope that in the future we can translate them to humans. So, but then, and it's not just us, there's hundreds of other companies that are actually trying to do this. So as a community, if any of us cracks this mystery of or mystery of aging or anti-aging, I think the rewards are quite huge.
Just out of curiosity, this may be a longer answer, but what would you identify as the mystery of it? Is it just the complexity of the molecule or the cell, or?
Yeah, so at the level of basically the level of cells and tissues, it's very highly complex because, our brains could be aging at a different way, at a different rate than our muscles, right? So in that sense, the open question in the field is that, do you want to think about interventions which target specific tissues, or do you want to think about interventions which can target the whole body as well? So in that sense, trying to, we have trillions of cells, right? Thinking of a way to kind of program all the cells to rejuvenate and live longer is it's a very tremendous, it's a holy grail, if you like, because there's so many things at the level of molecules and cells and tissues which has to go right to make this happen, right? But at the same time, the rewards are also quite high. And I think in that sense, I think that's why I call this as a grand challenge, because, if you can solve it, the rewards are quite big.
Absolutely. So can you speak a little bit more? You kind of teased it earlier, NASA, your work with NASA.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about your technology and that collaboration?
Yeah, sure. So NASA's mission, is to obviously understand, the outer space, but also there's a lot of interest in thinking about human exploration, right? So as an example, like right now, there's a big initiative to figure out how to get humans up to Mars. And that journey can take anywhere from about 6 months or longer. And now when astronauts are living in the space station, they undergo a lot of changes at the level of tissues. So just to give you one example, all the muscles atrophy. So then, and in fact, and studies show that a week of stay on the International Space Station, you can lose about 30% of your muscle mass. Now, if you're thinking about a 6-month journey, so you can see that there's a huge challenge in having
that's a significant impact.
But of course, astronauts are under very strict exercise. They have to exercise to make sure that the protein synthesis inside all the muscles is high enough, right? So in that sense, NASA is quite interested in understanding the biology of this atrophy, but also hopefully the interventions, right? So this project which we received in our lab is to use this worm as an animal model and see if we can develop a technology that can measure how strong are these worms in space. So that means now if you have a tool that can tell you how strong are these worms, then maybe in the future you can think about drugs that you can expose these animals to and see which drugs are improving the muscle mass and making the animals be stronger, right? So this is the project which we have with them, and for us it's very exciting. Any space experiment in general is extremely exciting, right? But as a investigator, as a scientist, it's very exciting to think about how some idea you had about 6 years ago, where you can measure how strong are these animals and think about automation at the same time, has led to both a spaceflight experiment but also a business opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Your technology is about to go into space. That's in a very real way. That's very cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So our plan right now, in terms of dates, in October of this year is when the actual experiment is going to be launched, and the astronauts on the space station will be taking pictures or will be taking images of these animals, and they'll be transmitting those images onto ground, and we'll be analyzing these images to figure out how strong are these animals.
So once you're able to identify how strong they are, then like you were saying, as far as like muscle mass loss, you'll be able to determine what you can do to prevent that from happening, a significant muscle mass loss.
Yeah, basically our hypothesis is that just like humans, the worms will also atrophy all their muscles, right? And if that hypothesis holds true from our experiment, then you can start thinking about interventions or drugs.
Gotcha. So as an entrepreneur, what's this process been like for you, kind of going through identifying a problem within your field or an opportunity within your field and providing that solution or on your way to providing that solution?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who started his journey as a professor, you're always thinking about new discoveries, and I strongly believe that new discoveries will come from new tools. It's like thinking about Hubble telescope, right? Once you have the Hubble telescope, you can really see into the outer space. So the Hubble telescope is a new tool which allows you to make new discoveries. So in the same way, in my lab, we always think about tools and how we can use those to hopefully obtain some insights, right? But then, often, we develop a tool, but then you're still not as happy, or at least I'm not as happy, because that tool is not being used by, let's say, other people outside of our lab. And if you want those tools to be outside, one avenue is to actually commercialize, right? So this is when we started thinking about how to enter into this entrepreneurship journey. And given that Texas Tech and the Innovation Hub is now available, I think it naturally forms a conduit to take the discoveries and technologies which you develop in the labs at the university into as a business opportunities. So I think having that institutional infrastructure was extremely important to taking that step in terms of entrepreneurship.
It sounds like it does create a nice community or kind of launching pad for that entrepreneur. I'm kind of sitting here thinking this is incredible. You have technology that's going into space, and it's right here in Lubbock, Texas. Right. Is it that community that keeps you here, or why did you decide to keep your business in Lubbock?
Yeah, I think there is different reasons, both from the different reasons in terms of family, but also in terms of work. So just to give you an example, I mean, as you know, we hardly have any traffic here, right?
Right.
So if you think about in the life of a professor or somebody who wants to do, build tools and discoveries, the operational inefficiencies in life are extremely low here, right? Operational inefficiencies means taking your children to school and soccer and piano and all of that, right? Those becomes extremely easy here because, it's not as crowded. It's very easy to actually get around. So to me, that's a huge advantage. But then the economics of being in Lubbock is also are actually quite advantageous, right? Now, thinking about a business, I mean, I see great strengths in being here. Just as simple as, having our university and the resources of the university and the talent of the students, which we can harness into, it forms a natural way that given our university and the medical school and the innovation hub, and the triangle, I think, especially in my research, where it's an intersection of engineers or engineering and life sciences and entrepreneurship. I mean, all these three pillars are just right here. So for me, it was a natural way to establish the business here. And on top of that, we have received grants from here. So I think LIDA, helped along with the Innovation Hub to promote these grant opportunities. So I think in that sense, I see plenty of tick boxes in terms of the list if you want to establish a business. So it's very attractive to be here.
So you're well on your way as an entrepreneur. What would you say to someone who's starting out, or any tips that you have for anyone who has that idea? Or
Well, I don't think. I think I'm just starting. I'm not on my. I mean, we are on the trajectory, I think, but there's still tremendous amount of learning we're going through. We still engage with our hub enters. Ask for advice, ask for help, because these are things which we need, especially as an early stage companies. I think in terms of just advice, often they say if you believe in the technology, then you can go into the outside world and make a business out of it. I think there's a significant amount of truth associated with that, but I would also say that you actually need plenty of help along the way, right? It's hard to do it on your own, and the advice that I have for incoming teams into the Accelerator program is to just enjoy engaging with all the mentors, because if you think about 6 of these mentors, and each of them on average is about anywhere from 40 to 50 in terms of age. Mm-hmm. So 6 times that's like 300 years of experience, right?
Right.
And it's right here. So in that sense, to me, it's very exciting that these resources are there, but I think we are still not using them actively. At the same time, it's an opportunity for growing, I think. So in that sense, the advice is just, make sure you talk to a lot of people about your technology, but also the business. And I think there's a lot of experts in-house here.
Absolutely. It's good to take those learning experiences and
Sure.
apply it. That way you start a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And you broke it down molecule by molecule, and I can go home saying that I studied engineering microfluidic technologies today.
Okay.
So I'll have to say that to a few people so I can sound pretty smart.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's a pleasure speaking.
You as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Katherine White with the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance. Thanks for joining us today. Hub City Spokes is presented by the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance and produced in partnership with Hamill Brothers Studios. A special thanks to the Innovation Hub here at Texas Tech University for hosting us. To hear more from our creators and catalysts, visit lubbockeda.org/podcast.